Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and today I wanted to talk about gouramis. Now I realize that's a big family of fish, anywhere from the sparkling gourami, which is about an inch or so, up to the giant gourami, which we measure in feet. But I wanted to focus on the gouramis that we typically find at fish stores. And the reason for that is they can either go really, really well in your tank, or they can be a disaster. So stay tuned. All right everybody, so we're looking at our Opaline Gourami in the 150 gallon. Gouramis come from Asia and parts of the Middle East. Water parameters, we've had no issues keeping them as low as around 6.5 pH all the way up to about 8.2. We make sure our pH is relatively stable, and that is definitely a very important aspect of water quality. Temperatures, probably go as low as around 74, 75, as high as maybe the 80, 81 or so. Certain gouramis might like it a little bit warmer, others a little bit cooler, but for the most part, we've had really good luck at those pHs and those water temperatures. Water hardness for us, total dissolved solids is right around 180. So I would say it's a slightly on the harder side, and they seem to work out just fine like that. Now, in terms of size, there is a huge variation. Again, we're talking about gouramis as a whole. If you're interested in a specific species, you're going to want to do a little bit more research, because you can go as low as an inch for a sparkling gourami, as big as a gourami measuring in feet. You know, the giant gouramis will be 20, 24 inches easily, and they'll be big, wide-bodied fish. Now, coloration is all over the place here. Again, you're looking at an Opaline Gourami, but generally why people are attracted to them is when they see them in the fish stores. They do have nice colors. We've had gold gouramis. You're going to see a pearl gourami a little bit later. These opalines, the blues. Of course, they've got all the dwarf gouramis and honey gouramis. So there's a lot of really nice color when it comes to these fish. And the males and females are pretty much the same color. So it doesn't really matter in terms of the sex of the fish in regard to color. Now, where things get a little tricky, and really the main point of this video, is tank mates and temperament. So many gouramis can be semi-aggressive, and I think that's one of the things that we really have to consider if you're looking at gouramis, and that is there can be gouramis such as the honey gourami, which is relatively peaceful, fits pretty well into just about any community tank that is more on the peaceful side. But then a lot of the gouramis can be somewhat aggressive. So these opalines, the golds look very similar to these, as do the blues. We've had them in with cichlids, as you see here. Here's a pearl gourami in with severums. There's a red-tailed shark in here. The blue gourami, or the opaline gourami that you had seen earlier, was in with frontosa and geophagus and other types of severums. I've had gouramis in the 150 when the 150 was a peacock and hap cichlid tank. And it was a gold gourami that pretty much for a long time ran that tank. And there was a 6.5, 7 inch Lethrinops intermedius, which is a large hap, and it was subservient to that gourami. And eventually the cichlids kind of took over, but gouramis can certainly be on the semi-aggressive side. If you're looking for more peaceful gouramis, I would definitely look at the honey gourami, which is a nice orange. It's about maybe 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches max. Female dwarf gouramis tend to be fairly nice in terms of their temperament, not nearly as aggressive. They might get 2.5 inches or so and show a lot of nice color, whether that's blue or a little bit of red. If you're looking for something semi-aggressive, then the blues, the golds, the opaline gouramis that I showed you earlier, even this pearl gourami would fit nicely into a semi-aggressive tank where maybe you've got some larger tetras. Be careful with the barbs, because the barbs, some barbs will do a little bit of damage to fins, and of course you don't want that happening to your gouramis, but they tend to hold their own pretty well. Like I said, I've had gouramis in, as you can see here, with some relatively peaceful South American cichlids, but they've been in with African peacocks and haps and have done okay. Not necessarily something I would recommend. It may not work out very well, but it's something that we've done in the past and not had too many issues. So you really have to be careful with the species that you are picking, and make sure you do your homework on that particular species to make sure that they're not going to cause some problems. Now, feeding them is simple. Gouramis don't tend to be too picky when it comes to food. So like our sparkling gouramis, they'll eat flake food. They like frozen brine shrimp. They'll eat live baby brine shrimp. These larger gouramis like the pearl or the opaline that you see along with the golds and the blue gouramis, they will eat bloodworms. Just about any type of food that we've put in the tank, they will tend to eat. Now, when it comes to tank size, that really depends on the type of gourami. What we're looking at here, the pearls, the blues, the opalines that I've shown you so far, would probably do best in at least a 40-gallon breeder or larger. Could you put one in a 29? Possibly, but I think if you've got one of the more aggressive gouramis, you're going to wind up having issues. So, honey gouramis, those can certainly go in something maybe 20 gallons or greater. The sparkling gouramis, we've had them in 5.5-gallon tanks without any issues. But these that you typically see more commonly at the pet stores, yeah, you're probably going to want a 40-gallon breeder, ideally maybe like a 55. The moonlight gouramis tend to get pretty large as well. So you're going to want a little bit of a larger tank. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to gouramis, it's not necessarily recommended to keep more than one in a tank, especially if you've got males. In my experience, at least, every time I've tried to keep more than one gourami in a tank, a larger gourami, we've had issues where the dominant one will mercilessly chase the other gouramis around to the point where they had to be removed and put in other tanks. That may not happen for you, but it's happened for us enough where we recognize that it's just not worth the potential hassle and the problems. And so we keep the gouramis in tanks, generally speaking, by themselves. Even the small ones, like these sparkling gouramis on the lower right here that you see, when you put multiples in a tank, the males will chase each other around. They're surprisingly fast for such a small fish. So just be careful when you're trying to put gouramis together. It's been done. I've seen it done. I've seen videos where people have got lots of gouramis in a tank. I just tend to stay away from it. So decorations, they would feel secure with, plants and rocks and, woodwork like you've seen in just about all the tanks that I've shown you, except for the store tour video tanks. They generally like to hang out towards the top of the tank. So something to really, really think about with any type of gourami. They're a labyrinth fish, which means they have an organ that helps them store oxygen. So they need to get to the top of the tank, similar to like a betta. And they're going to gulp air at the top of the tank, and then they're going to hold that air in that organ, and they're going to keep it there. And then when that air runs out, that oxygen runs out, they're going to go to the top of the tank. So they have to have access to the top of the tank. We can't have a lot of floating plants or something that's going to prevent them from gulping that air. Also, be careful with filtration. They do not typically like a lot of strong flow. So if you've got a hang on the back that's really kicking out a lot of water, you're going to probably want to dial that down, or at least only have it on one side of the tank so the gourami can go to the other side of the tank and not be getting whipped around. If you've got power heads at the top of the tank, that may not be the best situation. So just be thinking about how much water flow you have at the top of the tank. What will often happen with gouramis, and this is kind of interesting, when they're stressed, what I found is you'll find them towards the bottom of the tank, just kind of resting on the gravel, motionless. That can be for a number of reasons. Maybe water parameters are off. So one of the first things that I found when something is wrong with our water parameters, the gouramis are one of the first fish that kind of shows that for us. And so they'll usually be resting on the ground. Now, if they just woke up, that's one thing. But if the lights have been on and the tank has been active for a while and they're still just sitting there, check your water parameters. Make sure your temperature is what it's supposed to be. Maybe check your pH. Certainly check ammonia and nitrite levels. Often, if there's a problem with disease such as ick, I have found that gouramis usually will just sit at the bottom of the tank. You'd think they'd want to go to the top, and they will do that as well, but they will often just kind of sit there motionless at the bottom of the tank, and that's when I know something might be up with the tank. So just keep an eye on that. Now, I'm not really going to go into breeding. They are nest builders. There are videos out there. I have not bred them, so I'm not going to talk a lot about something I haven't done. They are certainly fish that you can breed, but it's just, like I said, it's not something I've done. So again, when it comes to the gourami, it's a great fish. There are lots and lots of potential options out there, anywhere from an inch for a sparkling gourami to a couple feet for the giant gourami. Please just be careful when it comes to aggression. I've seen a lot of beginners go out and get these gouramis because they are really cool, really colorful, and they want almost like a centerpiece fish for their tank. But even the male dwarf gouramis can be aggressive. If you're going to be keeping multiple gouramis in a tank, that may be an issue, depending on hiding spots and how large the tank is and other inhabitants. Watch out for other fish. If they're, something like platies and guppies, and you've got an opaline gourami or a gold gourami or a blue gourami in there, they could very well start exerting some dominance over those fish, and especially those slower moving fish. That may not work out so well. So again, I would encourage you, if you've got your heart set on a specific type of gourami, go out there, do the research on that particular one, because the last thing you want are issues. All right, everybody, so hopefully you found that useful. I would love to hear your feedback. Have you kept gouramis? Was it a good experience, a bad experience? If you kept them successfully, how did you do it? Leave that in the comments section below. Would certainly appreciate it. Again, that's a place where people can go to find further information. I'm just one person with my experiences. Maybe you've experienced something different. So if you like this video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.